So I've been an online marketer for roughly half a decade. And what I found to be true during that time is that the number one most important thing about marketing is actually the most overlooked part about it. And that is research. And when I say research, I don't mean research in the typical way most business owners do it. And we'll come to that in a second. But firstly, I kind of want to drive the point home as to why research is so important in the first place. That is, you need to understand that what marketing, selling, and persuasion, like as a whole, is about is making people do an action. I mean, just think about it. Buying your product and then following through is an action, right? Right. So with that in mind, let's just imagine this is an analogy I like to use to drive this point home. Imagine you were in a room with 100 smokers, and your job was you had maybe like an hour, you had to hold a presentation, and your job during that presentation was to make them all stop smoking. Now, if your life depended on it, what is it you would say to them to persuade them? Because after all, quitting smoking is also an action, just like buying your product. So the same persuasion tactics, I don't really like that word, but I'm going to use it anyways, would apply to this as well. Like, what is it you would say to them? Well, if you're like most people, you'd probably, you know, say the basics. Smoking causes, lung cancer, and it can, I don't know, increase your blood pressure, and it's so unhealthy. But here's the thing, chances are, like, these people have heard that a million different times before. So if they've heard it a million different times before and they still don't stop, how likely is it that they're gonna stop after hearing it for the million and first time? Quite unlikely. But on the other hand, imagine that instead of 100 random people, this was a room with 100 women who smoke and wanted to be future moms. Now, this opens up an opportunity for you to, I'm going to target their emotions from a different angle. I know that's a weird way to put it, but let me explain to you what I mean. So, what I would do in this situation is instead of talking or instead of focusing mainly on, you know, the risks could have for them, I would focus on the risks it could have for their future kid, right? Because after all, well, there are two main aspects to this. First of all, just as I said, chances are they've heard all of this stuff many times before. And second of all, I just believe that people are way more inclined to do something for their kids rather than for themselves. And why that is, and I could get into that, but that's way above my pay grade. That's a story for a completely different video. And actually, no, I just as I said, that's a way beyond above my pay grade, and honestly, I don't care. But it's important that we know that people are way more inclined to do something for their kids and for their loved ones, usually, than for themselves. It's just as I said, that is important. Now, here's the thing. Here's the main point I'm trying to say it or to get over to you. You see, what changed wasn't the actual product you sold, or wasn't your message, but simply your understanding of the people you were talking to. And here's why this is so important, because you have to understand, like humans, people, we are emotional beings. So, what do you think will be more likely to persuade us humans? Logic or emotion? Obviously, emotion, because we're emotional beings again. And truth be told, the only way you can emotionally persuade someone is if you understand their emotions in the first place. Am I wrong? Of course not. I'm right. So, and that's the thing, but the only way you can understand their emotions is if you understand the problem and the person you're selling to in the first place. I kind of like to think of it like a gun. And I know that's kind of a weird analogy to use, but just stick with me for a moment. So, in this case, the gun, the actual barrel, and the revolver or whatever the gun is itself would be the words, the avatar or the character in the ad or piece of content or whatever it is, and the stories, analogies, etc. you use to relate to the audience. Now, the actual bullets that are being fired, is the understanding of the people you're talking to, right? Of prospects. It's the understanding of the prospects. But here's the thing, if you just have the gun, meaning you know how to, kind of some tactics, I'm going to use the word again, copywriting, marketing, selling persuasion, and stuff like that, but you don't have the actual bullets themselves, how far are you going to go? Probably not that far. On the other hand, if you actually have the bullets, meaning you understand the market, you understand the people you're talking to, but you don't have the gun, once again, you're not going to go that far. So, yeah, there you have it. The most overlooked and arguably also the most important aspect of marketing. Now, if you enjoyed that, you can go ahead and watch this video, which is a full masterclass on selling, talking exactly what it is you should do and how you should persuade people to take an action you want them to do to buy your products using your research.